Hello and welcome to Gadget Joe, and today we have a gaming PC without a graphics card. In today's video we're taking a look at a PC that can run Fortnite really quite efficiently without a graphics card, and what I mean by that is that this system here does not indeed have a graphics card. Now before I get into more detail of how exactly that's working, I'll explain a bit about the product itself. Now, a lot of you will have already seen this if you subscribe to the channel and you've seen previous videos. This has been mentioned a few times, and in fact I used it quite recently to review this exact monitor, the piXL 27-inch curved 165Hz monitor, and we'll leave a link in the description as to where you can go and check that video out. But this is indeed the Logix 8600G GPU-less computer. Now what I mean by that is it's a computer that's built for entry-level gaming, and obviously you can do things like office use and general homeware, but it's a computer that doesn't feature a graphics card. This product is made by a company called Logix. Logix are one of the new channel partners that I recently mentioned in one of the videos before this. Logix basically build pre-built systems. What that means is you can basically go to their website, which is currently under revision and will be completed very shortly, but I will leave a link in the description to the website. What they do is build computers that are ready to go. So all you need to do is go onto the site, look through the options that they have available. They do also do custom builds as well if you need something more specific. You can simply contact Logix and get something built for you. But they do sell a range of systems that are pretty much ready to go straight out of the box. So they have different systems, whether it be gaming setups or whether it be a standard home office setup or just a personal computer or a gaming system, or alternatively they even do things like systems that are adapted and specifically designed for features like CCTV. So if you've got a business and you want your business monitoring and covering, they do offer computers that are specifically designed to give you the best experience when it comes to monitoring your premises. Let's take a look at the product we've got right in front of us today. This particular system is marketed as I mentioned earlier in the video, a product that is designed for entry-level gaming and also for general everyday use. Now don't be fooled by the fact that it does not indeed have a graphics card built in. That's because this utilises the new AMD 8600G chipset. Now the 8600G is what is called an APU. Now an APU is different from a CPU because even though it still works exactly the same, it's got a CPU in it, it is effectively a CPU, it also has a graphics chip built into it. So this APU is a 6-core 12-thread 4.3 GHz unit. It can also turbo boost up to 5 GHz, and it also features an AMD Radeon 760M built in so that you can do most entry-level 1080p gaming. You don't need an extra additional GPU. So to put that to the test, because that's one of the key things that I'm really going to focus on for this video, obviously I'm going to go through the specs in a moment, but in the video I'm going to be putting it to the test. I'm going to run 3D Mark TimeSpy to give it a benchmark of an overall general score, and I will also be testing the hard drive, I'll be testing things like the RAM, and obviously the general performance of everyday tasks, video playback and things like that. But I'm also going to be putting a couple of games to the test. Now the reason that I'm going to use the games that I use is because, again, this is not marketed as a high-end gaming setup. It's ideal as a beginner gaming setup. So if you've got your kid that wants a gaming setup but doesn't want to break the bank and wants to do something to really get themselves into the game scene, then this is probably something that's ideal for them. Or alternatively, if you want a system that you can run at home for all your office and work, you also want to do some light gaming on the side, this is definitely something that you should look at, because obviously that 8600G makes it ideal. So the two games that I'm going to run are Fortnite and Rocket League. The reason I've chosen them is because they're not graphically intensive games, but they're also very popular games for most gamers, because obviously Fortnite is an online battle scene. You can battle with all your friends, and obviously you can change your skins and do all the customization like that. I will mention before we get into a video, I'm not very good at gaming, so especially on Fortnite. So what I had to do is I had to get my daughter's fellow in to play Fortnite on this. And Rocket League is also a very competitive online game as well, which combines driving and football all into one. What's more is they don't need a lot to run them. So hopefully this system will run them nice and smoothly, and we'll really put it to the test to see just how playable they are on a system without a discrete graphics card in them. So before I do that, let's go over the specs of this system. As you can see, it looks like a gaming system. It has all the RGB, it has the windows on the side to see everything in. It looks absolutely phenomenal. It's all housed in this stunning Antec NX410 case. Now this is a white case, as you can see, that has two 140mm RGB fans built into the front and a 120mm fan at the back. It does obviously have that 8600G that I mentioned earlier as the APU, running on a Gigabyte B650M motherboard with 32GB of Kingston Fury DDR5 RAM. It also has a 1TB Kingston NV2 NVMe SSD, so it's more than capable straight out of the box to do pretty much everything you throw at it. When you order a product, it gets sent to your house. It comes in a large box, usually the case box. Everything is ready to go. All you have to do is take it out, plug it in, finish the setup on your system. They all come preloaded with Windows 11. And obviously in the bag that you get with it, you also get a copy of Windows 11 with a code on there to activate your Windows license. There's no worries about getting everything in the right place. There's no worries about whether there's any compatibility issues or any software issues, because it's all done for you. And that is such an underrated feature nowadays, because whilst it's great to build your own system, I'm a big system builder. I like to build my own systems because I like to swap things in and out. Obviously, the nature of what I do swap things in and out quite a lot. If you're not really familiar with computers and you don't really know what to do, or you're wanting to have a gaming setup for yourself or for your children or as a gift, anything like that, and it's all a bit alien to you, this is the ideal route to go. Just go onto the website, look through the options. They'll give you a good idea of what these systems are capable of doing and what they're designed for. And all you need to do is give it to the person or set it up in your system, add a monitor, add a keyboard and a mouse, and you're good to go. It is that simple. Pre-builts are a very, very popular option, and this is exactly why. So this is a system all pretty much powered up. As you can see, it just looks like a standard desktop setup. I do have it paired with the piXL 27-inch curved 165Hz monitor that I reviewed recently. I will leave a link in the description as to where you can get your hands on one of these. I've also got the Marvo CM420 gaming keyboard set up. This comes with a keyboard, the mouse, and the mouse mat as well. Again, this is another video that will be coming out very shortly. So if you haven't already, please hit subscribe, because there's going to be plenty of content coming out, including not just the review on this, but also a review on the case itself and much, much more. So let's get started on the video itself, because what we're going to be doing here is, because it is obviously classed as an entry gaming setup, because even though it does have a GPU built into that 8600G, it's not primarily aimed at obviously having high performance gaming. What I'm going to do is I'm going to throw some tests at the system itself, and then I'm going to do some tests on the hardware used, and also I'm going to do a couple of games. Going back over to those specs, it is obviously, as I mentioned before, an 8600G 6-core 12-thread processor in this, or an APU as it's classed, because it has the inbuilt graphics card. The clock speed of the processor is 4.3 GHz, but it does have a turbo boost function up to 5 GHz. The RAM used is Kingston Fury Beast 32GB sets. That's 2 sticks of 16GB on dual channel. There is also space to add more if you want to upgrade down the line, but 32GB right out of the box is more than enough for most people. That RAM does run at 5600 MHz as well. It's quite interesting because the 8600G is technically rated at 5200 MHz of RAM speed as a maximum, but this seems to run absolutely fine. It's probably about at the top limit of where you can really sort of push it before you start to encounter any issues. But this system has been built by people that know what they're doing, and it is super stable. What I've done with it already is I've installed everything, and I've not had any issues whatsoever. I've not done any tests myself before doing this, so you're going to see it as I see it here. It's not going to be the usual video where everything is shown up on the screen and there's different charts comparing it to things. It's going to be a video of you seeing it as I see it, basically, and then it's going to be a more idyllic, more accurate representation of what you would expect from a system like this. So if you was to just buy this system and then take it home, get it all set up, this is pretty much what you're going to see. You also have a Kingston NV2 1TB Gen 4 NVMe drive in here, which is rated up to 3500 megabytes read and write speeds. But again, I'm going to test that in a short while. The graphics component of a processor is actually a Radeon 760M graphics unit. Now that is rated to run most games at around 1080p on low to medium settings. But again, we'll see that very shortly. The motherboard is a Gigabyte B650M Micro ATX motherboard with plenty of options, and you've got Wi-Fi included. It does feature Wi-Fi 6E, and I've even got the 2 antennas that's included right in a box already installed, because the internet in the workshop is absolutely atrocious. But considering I'm I would probably say about 250 foot away from the modem or from the nearest extender, it's still picking up signal really well. All of this is housed in the Antec NX410 case. And as you can see, it is a visually stunning case. It's nice and white. It's really clean, minimalist, which for a setup like this is ideal. Now, some people might question the fact that it's a black motherboard and black components inside a white case, but actually I think it looks quite nice. Obviously, you can change it if you want to and go for a different setup inside, a different configuration to more match the white setup. But with it having a black door on this, as you can see, that is operated by magnets, it just fits in quite nicely, because there's obviously the black cables, there's black accents along the case, and then obviously you've got a black framed window on the front. So everything just ties in nicely with a white and black theme. It does feature two 140mm fans at the front for adequate cooling. It really does draw some significant amount of air, and then you've got a 120mm rear exhaust fan at the back, and that's pretty much it for cooling. But that's pretty much all you're going to need, because this isn't historically a hot chip. I'm going to run CPU Z and stuff like that's in the background, so I can monitor the temperatures as well, so we can see if there's any issues. It is LED, which for gaming setups is absolutely vital. And you can change through the setup of the LED modes, either through the software on a computer. You can download RGB suites on the computer itself and control the colours available through the LEDs on that, or alternatively there is a button on top that you can flick through different lighting modes. I've just got it set on white as it is, because I think that really finishes the look off. So, enough about me talking about it, I'll get on to the first test. So to start with, I'm running CPU ID hardware monitor. Now this is going to be running in the background to basically give me an ability to monitor the temperature of the system and obviously check that there's no voltage issues, and obviously everything runs fine. As you can see, the temperatures are quite stable already, with a lower 25 degrees and a higher 49.8 degrees. That's mostly when it's come to loading software up. And then it's operating around between probably say 35 and 45 degrees as a standard. The memory also is running nice and cool at 17 degrees and a max on one stick, and 15.8 on another one, which is quite common to see on most sticks. And then you've got the hard drive itself, which is operating at a steady 21 degrees Celsius. But you've got here that AMD Radeon 760M graphics that's built into the CPU, and that again is running at 24 degrees, so nice and cool. The next thing that we're going to run is the MSI Afterburn. This is more so that I can display the current frames and temperature when I'm doing the gaming in a short while. But as you can see, it's operating at 800 MHz for the graphics card with a 2800 MHz maximum clock speed. That 32GB RAM really does help in a setup like this, because you'll find that an APU will obviously utilize the RAM and everything built into the processor itself, but also it will then draw some assisted RAM from the RAM itself. So when you get a standard graphics card, everything is all enclosed into the card itself. It has its own memory dedicated to that graphics card. Whereas obviously a CPU that has a graphics card built into it, not a graphics card, a graphics chip built into it, relies heavily on the external RAM on your system to give it that extra bit of memory and bandwidth. Well, obviously with this, it is ideal because you've got 32GB, so there's a generous amount of RAM, even considering that it would only really take between probably 2 and 3GB of RAM. From that, you're still left with a large amount of RAM for the system in general. So what I'm running here is 3D Mark. This is the basic edition, and I'm just going to run a standard times by test, and this will basically give me an idea of some of the expected frames per second and obviously the performance of the CPU and the GPU itself. I'm going to let it run through the test and then we'll find the results at the end and we'll take a look at what we get. In terms of gaming performance of the 8600G right as it is closely touted to be very similar to GTX 1060. As you can see, everything is running nice and smoothly. Now it's worth noting that if you're looking at this and you're seeing the frames per second now relatively low, between probably 10 and 25, that is because this is a very graphic intensive test and it's basically designed to really push every aspect of the graphics card or graphics chip in this case to really show all the information on the screen, and it's got lots of details in all different points. But as you can see, even at 15 frames per second, it's running nice and smoothly. Probably helped quite significantly by the 165Hz display, but it runs everything nice with no stuttering, no issues, and it just seems to run quite well. It is utilising currently about 8GB of RAM. Obviously, we've got 32GB of RAM to play with, so there's plenty of room for extra manoeuvring. So when it comes to 3D Mark, the score might look relatively quite low. It's 2745 as a time spice score, which pretty much puts it in the range of a budget gaming PC and maybe a mid-price gaming laptop, which is pretty much where I expected this to be, because it's not touted to be a really high-performing gaming system. The fact that it can run all these just from the CPU without a direct graphics card included is absolutely fantastic. You can see the CPU score was 8557. That's thanks to the fact that it was clocking up to 5 GHz in speed when it was turboing. And then obviously you've got those 6 cores and 12 threads running to make it really boost the performance of it. The average score was 3010 and the best score was 3805. So it's pretty much where I would have expected it to be. This is quite an intensive test. Graphically, as you could see with everything that was going on, it has a lot of detail and a lot of colours and a lot of motion, movement to really display. The fact that you can do that with a system that is graphics cardless, effectively, is absolutely phenomenal. So before I go into any of the gaming, I'm just going to run Crystal Disk Mark so that we can check that hard drive that's built in to really see if it does match up to that 3500 read and write supposed times. Do 5 packet tests on a 1GB test size for the C drive, and we'll give it a go now and see what we get. So the results are pretty much what I expected them to be. The write speeds aren't quite at the 3500 rated speed, but 2600 megabytes of write speed is absolutely phenomenally fast, and obviously for a system that's classed as a budget entry gaming system, you're definitely going to take advantage of something like that. It's going to make the operating system and your gameplay, everything just really nice and zippy and fast, and it's just going to be really quite effective when you're using your system for everyday usage. The read score is actually slightly higher than what it's rated at, which pretty much speaks for itself. So we're going to finish this test. For this point of the video, I did actually start to test it running Fortnite whilst I was playing it, and it felt a little bit unfair to do it because I am absolutely shocking at Fortnite. I could not play it. I was wandering around like a lost soul, trying to find my way, trying to work out how to use the guns, trying to work out how to use different settings. In fact, I spent about 5 minutes wandering around looking for people when I finally realised that I was in creative mode and there was no other people to shoot. So that gives you a bit of an idea of what it was like. So what I've done for the sake of this video, to give you a more transparent and accurate finding of the testing of this system whilst running Fortnite, I left it to my daughter's fella. So for this part of the video at least, you're going to be watching, not me, but you're going to be watching a young man called Maz. So welcome Maz, playing Fortnite. What I did whilst he was playing it was I let it record and watched basically over his shoulder to see exactly what sort of performance we were getting from the system. Whilst he was playing through, he noticed that there was next to no stutters in performance at all. Obviously it's got a 60 frames per second cap on the gameplay when it came to the settings. I went into the settings to find out what the optimal settings are set by the game at the start of the game, and all of them were medium to high settings with high quality on details, and also that 60 frames per second cap which was recommended. Naturally we could have probably pushed it a little bit higher and got some more frames out of it, but we would have probably found that it started to have some performance issues. Running it between 50 and 60 frames per second, very, very, very rarely dropping below 50 frames per second throughout the entirety of the gameplay. Everything ran super fine, super smooth, and there was no issues. He particularly pointed out the fact that everything loaded where it should do and as quickly as it should do, especially in a shooting game when you're playing online in a competition. It is something that really matters. And he was still able to finish on a system that he's not used to playing, that is probably subpar to what he's used to playing on, and he still managed to finish 12th in the competition. It just really shows how well the system performs. It's got super bright, vibrant colours, and he did particularly mention that the field of view, the range of the field of view was fantastic as well, and everything loaded in nice and quickly where it should have been. So overall, a fantastic little experience from this system, meaning that Fortnite is definitely a game that you can really enjoy on this system. So now that we've finished testing Fortnite, I'm going to go back and start testing it on Rocket League. So thank you once again to Maz. Now let's move on. So now we're playing a game that I can actually play, and that is Rocket League, and as you can see, it looks absolutely fantastic. This is a game that's not quite as intensive as obviously Fortnite, so it is naturally going to look a bit better, and it just performs a lot better. This one we're averaging at the moment between 90 and 100 FPS, sometimes peaking slightly over. It's utilising 12 GB of RAM, so we've got plenty of RAM left over. The CPU usage is only 4% on this one, so obviously it's not a very CPU intensive game. It's mostly relying on that GPU, the graphics chipset, and as you can see, it performs really respectfully well, and no problems whatsoever. There's no motion blur, there's no issues when moving everything around. Everything just seems to cope well. The jumps, the boosts, everything just seems to work. It's really, really impressive. So if you're playing a game like Fortnite, then that's definitely something you can do. If you're playing a game like Rocket League, then that's more than definitely something you can do. So it's certainly more than capable of running this game. Let's see what it's all set at. So straight away out of the box, before I even touched any settings, it's all set at high quality too. So it's all high settings, everything on there, 165 frames per second recommended. So you could probably go a little bit higher if we need to. Render detail, high quality. Render quality, high quality. Running at 1920 by 1080 full screen. Obviously you can go higher if you have a higher resolution display, but this is a 1080p display, 165 Hz, which is obviously 165 FPS recommended on this as well. And pretty much the top settings on all of them, so really, really impressed. So overall it runs everything perfectly fine. It's not had any issues so far. Pretty much anything I've thrown at it. Obviously the score on 3D Mark was notoriously quite low, but if you actually compare it to some of the other older graphics cards, it's pretty much on par with where it needs to be. So pretty much everything I've thrown at this computer so far has done perfectly well. The gaming has been fantastic. Fortnite, as you could see, was more than playable. So another simple test to see just how well this computer can perform is obviously utilising that RAM once again, because I'm going to open as many windows as possible and open as many videos as possible and see if there is a noticeable difference or a noticeable decline in performance. So let's start off by clicking a video. We'll let that run. I'm going to put YouTube in once again. Open that, and then we'll open another video, and then we'll do the same again. And as you can see, it is starting to slow down a little bit, but that might also be down to the bandwidth of the internet. The internet is not great in here, as I mentioned before, but it seems to be running everything okay. I'm clicking on things, I'm opening things up, and the videos are all still playing, as you can see, with no real issues whatsoever. Now, this isn't really an intensive test as such, but it's naturally going to be something that's going to happen with most people's setup, because you do often have multiple tabs going. You don't always have multiple tabs of YouTube or video or stuff like that going, but this is a good little idea of just how capable this system is. Obviously, as you can see, everything seems to be running absolutely fine. It's rendering it quite quickly. There's no lagging at all. No matter where I go through the video, it plays instantly. What's more is when we open up the CPU hardware monitor, we can see that the temperatures have remained quite steady also. It has reached highs of 87.8, and that would have been obviously when it was doing gameplay, but 87.8 degrees is by no means a hot temperature when it comes to computers, and obviously those fans on the case are certainly doing a job. But you've got two large 140mm fans. In fact, it's probably a little bit overkill, so it's still nice and cool to touch. Obviously you can open it up and get a little bit of extra air in there if you do find that it gets a little bit too hot, but from what I've found so far, and I've been really sort of putting it under pressure, there's been no need to open this door and have extra airflow because it's just been handling it absolutely perfectly. So even with that 5600 megahertz of DDR5 memory in there, it's actually 400 megahertz over what's recommended for the upper limits of the 8600G. It's definitely been performing well. We've had no issues whatsoever. So I would probably go as far as to say that 5600 megahertz is definitely a very achievable speed for RAM. So that's pretty much our review of this system from Logix. Now this is marketed as the Snow White edition, hence the obviously white case. As I've mentioned before, there are different options available, but that was a review of this one. I found it to be absolutely faultless. Considering it is marketed as an entry gaming setup with that APU included, it certainly delivers on that and much more. In fact, it was super smooth. Everything I threw at it, it just handled with ease. Now obviously if you're going to go into more hardcore gaming titles, you're going to start to notice a drop in performance, and that is naturally going to happen due to the limitations of that onboard graphics chipset. Now you can of course add a graphics card to the system if you really want to boost your setup and boost your gaming power, but there's a few limitations that you're going to have to take into consideration, because the 8600G is a fantastic chipset, but it does come with its limitations. Unfortunately, the 8600G does not support PCIe Gen 5. It also does have supports for PCIe Gen 4, but it doesn't run on a PCIe 16 platform, it runs on a PCIe 8 platform, so you're going to lose some of your effectiveness of the graphics card with that. So if you're looking for a more high-end card, you're probably going to notice some issues in terms of getting the full performance out of that card, but by that point, you'd probably, if you're going to have the money to spend on a higher graphics card, you're probably wanting to look at something a little bit different in terms of CPU wise. Now I know some of you will be looking at this and thinking, right, okay, so for the same sort of price point I can get myself an older CPU and an older graphics card that can perform very similarly to this. Whilst that's true, you're going to find issues with future proofing. An older card and an older CPU is always going to be limited in terms of the infrastructure of that CPU and graphics card. You're going to be finding issues with compatibility a bit further down the line as well, especially when newer drivers come out and the support for those CPUs and graphics cards start to diminish. With an APU like the 8600G, you're almost future-proofing yourself because it is a newer infrastructure, so it is pretty much ready to go for years to come. So whilst it's not a massively high-performing gaming setup, it's something that's going to work right out of the box and play your games like Fortnite and Rocket League and any other similar games for years to come. So overall, it's a stunning build. One thing I will say is obviously you're going to get a lot of system builders on the market, especially on places like eBay, that offer pre-built systems, especially marketed as gaming setups. Please, especially the eBay ones, unless they're from an accredited place or a reputable brand, just steer clear of them, avoid them. They're often marketed as gaming because they will put the words gaming in the title somewhere. They'll use a really old graphics card, a really not very capable motherboard or processor. They'll use really old processors and market them as quad-core systems to really try and emphasize those numbers thrown at people, and then they just get them in an old case and slap some RGB fans on there and it looks like a gaming computer, because obviously RGB means gaming. Just please steer clear from them. If you're going to get a pre-built system, spend a little bit extra money and go to renowned system builders like Logix who know what they're doing. These guys have been doing this for many, many years, and I've been to the office where they build these systems. The guys' knowledge are really top-notch. the thought that's gone into this setup is absolutely fantastic, because as I've mentioned earlier in the video, the fact that they paired up everything they did, but you've got that higher speed NVMe SSD, so that everything runs nice and zippy. You've also got that 32 gigabytes of DDR5 RAM built into it, so that you've got loads of space to utilize the full potential of that APU, the onboard's graphics chip inside the CPU, and also be left over with lots of memory left to run everything with no issues whatsoever. The fact that everything is built in, ready to go, all the software is dialed in, there's no need to update any drivers, you just plug in and play. And then obviously you get a warranty on the product as well, so that if there is any problems, all you need to do is contact the guys and they'll get it sorted as soon as possible and in the most effective way. A lot of my kids play on consoles such as Xbox and PlayStations and stuff like that. I'm not a big gamer myself. They are trying to get me into it. But this is definitely something that is the next step up from an Xbox or a PlayStation. So that's pretty much it for my review of this product. Now, I know they are channel partners and it does look like I'm sort of blowing wind up their ass and saying, yes, it's a great product, but it genuinely is a great product. They came to me knowing that I'm going to be completely honest about what I find, and in this instance, I found nothing wrong with what I've got in front of me. It just works fantastically. It does everything it says it's going to do. Even running Fortnite, when it did run it, it was running at 60 frames per second. Now, admittedly, it was a 60 frames per second cap, so we could have probably hit it a little bit further. And as you saw, when my daughter's fellow was playing it, it ran absolutely perfectly. Now, obviously, a game like Rocket League isn't quite as intensive, and that ran absolutely faultless as well, and that was a game that even I could play. It just looks fantastic. In terms of the way it works, it just works. That's all you need to know. It just works. So if you're after a gaming setup for your children, or as a gift to a friend, or even for yourself, you're wanting to get yourself into a bit of gaming, or you want a system that's more than capable of running your work tasks or your home officing tasks, but also be able to do a bit of gaming on the side, look no further than the Snow White system by Logix. Again, I'll leave a link in the description below as to where you can go to get your hands on one of these, and that's pretty much it. So, a massive thumbs up from me, because this is just a bit of a no-brainer when it comes to a system build. Please, as I mentioned multiple times, stay away from those eBay sellers that are trying to sell you a gaming system. You're just going to encounter problem after problem after problem, and it ends up costing more than what you can get this for, just to try and fix that original system. And then by the end of it, you probably end up just binning it and going for something like this anyway. So I've been Gadget Joe. This has been the Logix Snow White 8600G entry-level gaming PC review, and that's it. So until next time, goodbye.